Hello everyone, and welcome to the first video in our new series, Learning Unreal Engine 5. Throughout this series, we will focus on learning Unreal Engine 5 from the perspective of a new user. We'll start today with the basics and build up our knowledge toward more detailed and complex topics in the future. In today's video, we're going to go over everything you need to know how to get started using Unreal Engine 5. First, we'll discuss the Epic Games Launcher. This is the software hub of Epic Games and the only way to access the engine itself. After that, we'll start a new project and get everything set up to start developing. We'll take a brief tour of the main editor itself, including the content drawer, the viewport, and some important locations for settings, as well as other key information about the editor. Finally, we'll talk about how to launch a simulation of your project to test it out. So let's get started. Before we can do anything else, we need to make sure that we have the Epic Games Launcher installed and working. If you have not installed the launcher, head on over to unrealengine.com/download. Here you can see the system requirements. We're not going to go over those in depth today, but you should definitely take a moment to make sure that your computer meets the recommended requirements. Scrolling down a bit, we have a button that allows us to download the launcher. Once you've downloaded that, the installation process is pretty straightforward. There is a video tutorial on this page that can help you work through the installation process. And further down, there's community and documentation resources if you need them. We're going to skip ahead, however, since the download and installation process can take a while. You may need to pause and come back to this video once you have the launcher installed. Once you've opened the launcher, it may start you on a different tab than the one you need in order to access Unreal Engine. Here, for example, I'm in the Store tab, which is the home for the Epic Games Store. The Library tab below that shows you the games you have installed through the store, and finally, the tab we need is Unreal Engine. Click on that and it'll bring you to the front news page for UE5. Feel free to poke around here if you want to read news and community updates, but we'll skip that for now. The Samples tab, next to that, contains content examples made by Epic Games themselves to show off certain features. You can see that the content samples cover a wide range of topics. These can be very useful if you need to reverse engineer some gameplay feature or find out the best practices for implementing things within Unreal. Next is the Marketplace tab. Here you can find all sorts of asset packs and plugins and feature samples from third-party creators. Very cool stuff overall, and keep an eye out for free content released monthly under the Free tab here. We're not going to spend any time on the last tab, Twinmotion, since that's outside the scope of this video. But the tab we're most interested in here is Library. Most of the time, if you're developing an Unreal Engine project, this is where you'll be operating out of. Up top, we have our engine versions section. You can see the different engine versions that you have installed, update them if there are any updates available, and otherwise manage your engine versions. To make sure you have the latest version, just click the yellow plus icon, and you'll get an option to install a new version of the engine. Here you can see the newest one available that I don't already have installed is 5.1.1, but I already have 5.2.0 installed, so we don't need that. It can be useful to go back and get older versions of the engine if your team is working on a project that is being developed in an older version. But we can remove that slot since we have 5.2, and that's the version we'll be working out of. Below that, we have a list of my projects. These are projects that are saved on your hard drive. You can see both of these were made in 5.0. And I could convert them to bring them up to 5.2 if I need to. We may look at doing that in a future video. The last thing to look at here on this page is the Vault. Any content that you've downloaded from the Marketplace tab will come here. So you can see I've got different plugins and asset packs here, some materials, some visual effects stuff, a cell shader, all kinds of other stuff here. But we don't need any of that for today, so we are just going to go ahead and launch the engine and start working on a new project. You can either launch from your engine version here, or in the top right corner, pick an engine version and launch there. Here again, you see the two projects that were in the My Projects section. On the left, you also have different content, starter content, or different types of things you might use Unreal for. Games, film video, architecture, product design, and simulation. We'll be starting with games, and we'll be starting a third-person project. Really, any of these would do for today's video, but I would prefer the third person because it lets you get the best view of things. Under project defaults, we get a few basic settings. Do we want to work with Blueprints or C++? We'll be working with Blueprints today. Platform, you can either target desktop or mobile. This isn't set in stone. You can still develop and push it out for different platforms later. Quality preset, we'll use maximum. We're not going to use starter content, although that can be useful at times. We'll keep this project a little bit lighter weight by not including that. And then ray tracing, I don't think we need that for this project either. We'll give our new project a name. We'll call this Learn 5. And you can designate a custom save location, but we will leave that to our default for now. Go ahead and hit the create button, and it will start working on creating a project for you. Once the engine opens up with our new project, we can see right away that we've got our viewport here that lets us see the current level that we're working in. Up top, we have the menu bar, toolbar. Over here, we've got our scene outliner that has references to every object that's currently in the scene. This does not just include static meshes, which is what all these SM cubes are, but you can see that it also contains lighting, some gameplay objects like the player start, a text render for this text down here, and then some world information, basic background data that we're not really going to dig into. You can see as I'm highlighting different things, selects them in the viewport, and it also opens up details about them in the details panel. So when I've got this cube selected, you can see that the static mesh for this object is a chamfered cube using a blue material. Physics are turned on for this object. Got some basic physics settings here. Here we've got collision settings. It's currently set to be a physics actor, but you can turn on all sorts of other physics or collision for it. How lighting interacts with it. You can have it not cast a shadow or cast a shadow. There's advanced lighting settings as well. Some render settings, so I can turn it invisible. Again, more advanced settings underneath that. Some LOD stuff and some just more niche and advanced stuff down here underneath. The details panel is context sensitive, so if I select something else, it may not have all of the same settings. Notice there's no collision for the player start because that would never need collision. Or if I select the text render, the material that I see is the font. And I guess here's where you can put in what the text says. So we will change that to Learn Unreal Engine click away and it saves it. Yeah, that's the details panel. The next thing I want to look at is down here on the bottom. We have the content drawer, the output log, and the command console. The output log and command console can be very useful for stuff like debugging your project or checking very specific things about your project and seeing what's going on. A little bit outside of the scope of what we're doing today, though. So let's take a look at the content drawer. The content drawer is going to be the basic file structure of your project. So we've got a top level all folder, content folder below that, with 3 folders of characters, level prototyping, third person. We're going to right click here and create a new folder. Call this art. And that's somewhere we can put all of our textures and materials and particle effects and static meshes and animations and just anything art based. We can just create a whole file structure here under art for that. And we'll create another folder, call that code. And that's somewhere where we can put all of our code stuff. So all of the C++ code, all of the blueprint code, anything having to do with our user interface, anything that requires some code behind it will get tucked into this code folder. That's generally how I like to set up my file structure, is split them out based on those things. Your team may want to do things differently. Just make sure you're on the same page with the rest of your team. Let's go into art, create another folder. Call this materials. Another one for static meshes. Another one for skeletal meshes. And so on and so forth. One of the neat things you can do is you can organize these visually by giving them custom colors. So for materials, we'll give it a nice green color. Over there. For skeletal meshes, for now we'll give it pink. And for static meshes, give it a cyan. You see that the content drawer keeps getting tucked away on me. You can come in here and bring up the window content browser, and that will dock it permanently there. It's worth noting that anything that's docked, you can pull away and customize the look and feel of your editor. So if I want the details panel over here on the left, I can just do that. It will stay over here on the left. I kind of like the details panel where it was though, so we'll keep that there. Now if I go into art, you can see everything's visually distinct. Can help navigate quite a bit. So that's the content browser and content drawer. Now let's take a look at the viewport. In order to navigate the viewport, I find the easiest way is to right click and hold. That lets you get 360-degree up, down, left, right, and diagonal view of the camera. You can pan the camera around as you need to. And then you can use WASD, WASD controls to fly around in your scene. If you need to fly faster, you can scroll up on the scroll wheel. You can see it gets very fast. Or if you need to slow that down, you just scroll down on the scroll wheel while you're flying around. Another way to navigate is left click and hold on your mouse. I don't find this quite as intuitive because you have to use the left and right to just pan horizontally. You don't really have a way to look up and down doing this. because as you go up, you go forward, and down you go backward. One other key point of navigation is that you can full frame a selected object by highlighting it, then hitting the F key, which can be a very nice way to zip around your level, especially on bigger levels. The four main tools for the viewport are the Select tool, which uses Q as a hotkey, the Translate or Move tool, which uses W. You can see the widget change down here as I change which tool I'm using. Rotate, hotkey for that is E. And then Scale, and the hotkey for that is R. So Q, W, E, R. You're going to be using those quite a bit. The next option we have here allows you to change whether the gizmo on your object when you're scaling, rotating, moving is in world space or local object space. So to demonstrate that, we'll move our object up a bit and rotate it. And you can see we're currently set for world space, and this gizmo doesn't change no matter how much I rotate it, what direction I rotate it in. The gizmo stays the same. However, if I change that to local space, you can see it now aligns to the local space of the cube, and will change as I rotate things around. Both of these are incredibly useful depending on the situation. Like if I have something rotated and I want to move it up on its local axis rather than the world axis, I can do that. For now, I'm going to come into the details panel and reset all of the rotation on that to 0, 0, 0. If I want to put it back on the ground, I can just drop it down. But sometimes it's not so easy to align it perfectly, so you can just hit the End key, and that will move it down to the next thing that has collision with it. Other key stuff up here is the snap controls, so you control how an object snaps to different surfaces. You can turn on surface snapping, give it an offset. We can change how it snaps to the grid when translating and dragging objects around. I can either turn that on or off and then set the increment to 1 unit, 5 units, 10, 50, 100, etc. Angle snapping, same thing for rotation, and scale snapping for scaling. Here I get some camera controls. And then finally, a button to maximize or restore the viewport. Last, I want to look at some settings. Over here in the world settings, there's all kinds of stuff that can be useful. The main one that I change at least once per project is this game mode override. And I can turn on different game modes, usually a custom game mode that I'm creating for whatever level or game that I'm making. There's also other stuff here, like the kill Z is what Z value, so down here, down, 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 down. If a player falls below -1000, it will kill that player. We can change that with the kill Z value here. We can change gravity and override that. And some stuff for foliage, landscapes, navigation, VR, all kinds of stuff in here that is a little bit beyond what we're going to be needing to do today, but you just need to know that this world settings is here and can be useful for certain things. The next settings I want to talk about are under the Edit, Project Settings. There's a lot of different stuff in here, and we will be coming back to this at some point. But you can see just here at the top level, you can give your project a custom thumbnail, description, project ID, project name. We can also modify inputs, which we will be doing at some point. Under packaging, this is sort of how you're going to package your project when you finally build it for distribution. And there's all sorts of other stuff: maps and modes, movies, target hardware, support platforms, and so on. Like I said, there's quite a lot here, and we will be coming back to this pretty often as we develop our project. Lastly, I want to talk about how to play a simulation of your project once you have some stuff in here and you're ready to go. Anytime you want to test your project, all you have to do is come up here and hit the play button. This will let you play a simulation in the viewport. And you can run around and do whatever you need to do. This is especially useful for debugging things, testing your art, making sure everything looks correct. You're going to be doing quite a bit of simulation playing. And that's going to be it for today's video. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share us on socials. We'll have links below to follow us on other social media platforms. If you want to support the channel, please subscribe to us on Patreon. We have weekly dev streams and art streams, currently on Tuesdays and Saturdays. And in our next video, we will be talking about an introduction to materials in Unreal Engine. Thanks for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon.